You're not an Israeli military leader who you think must have a clear rationale for doing this. You've already put yourself in their shoes. So stay in their shoes. Stay in their shoes. No, stay if you can. Stay in their shoes and tell me why they've done it this way round.
They've done it this way round because there is a supposed border with Gaza, which was meant to be protected and people were not meant to cross, and that was sorted. And so when people then come across that border, the Israelis will say, well, why should we give up some of our land?
What makes this exchange so revealing is that the disagreement isn't really about whether Israel has a security concern. That's the easy part. After October 7th, Israel obviously has a security argument to make. The much harder question is where that security response should take place and who pays the price for it. The caller's argument is essentially, Israel wants more separation from Gaza. So why create that separation by taking additional territory inside Gaza? Why not create the buffer on Israeli-controlled territory instead? And that is where the conversation becomes uncomfortable. Because once you accept the basic premise that Israel wants a larger security buffer, another question immediately follows. Who should surrender the land to create it? The caller tries to explain the decision from the perspective of Israeli military planners. Perhaps from their point of view, giving up Israeli territory would make little sense. Perhaps they believe the existing border failed to prevent the October 7th attack, so they want greater distance between Israeli communities and potential attackers. That argument can certainly be examined. But understanding a military rationale is not the same thing as accepting its consequences. And that's the key distinction that gets lost in this exchange. If the objective is security, critics are going to ask why that security must involve expanding a separation zone into Palestinian territory. Supporters can argue that Israel is trying to prevent another attack. Critics can argue that the method itself creates another serious humanitarian and political problem. And neither side gets to escape that question simply by repeating the word security. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because the real issue here isn't simply whether Israel has a right to protect its citizens. The real argument is about how far that right extends, what methods are justified, and what happens when protecting one population requires imposing enormous consequences on another. And that's why this exchange becomes much bigger than the original question. The moment you start asking where the buffer zone should exist, you are no longer discussing security in isolation. You're discussing territory, responsibility, civilian consequences, and the political meaning of the decisions being made.
This is really important stuff. Can we prioritize the three things that you've picked out? So can I prioritize them? Do you mind? I do that?
I don't know what you're going to say, so I can neither approve nor disapprove in advance.
So I think the MPs, given that the MPs were just going to go and do a report, it's really of no interest that they got banned or didn't get banned. So the number of people who are likely to be killed. No, I understand. I'm talking about the number of people who might get hurt or killed or whatever. I mean, in terms of domestic politics, there's nothing more important than the leader of the opposition siding with a regime that is punishing British parliamentarians for thought crimes. I'm trying to, which I think you're doing as well, is focus on the deaths and the war in Gaza. So it's always slightly wary when people come on and ask questions I can't answer about. Do you approve? Do you disapprove of this? The phone-in is about the loss of credibility or support for a regime that is doing various things, and that includes killing 15 paramedics and apparently lying about it. It includes Israeli combatants queuing up to tell us about this so-called kill zone, this latter-day Hiroshima. And then because I'm a British radio presenter, I consider it highly important that the leader of the opposition has decided to side with the perpetrators of those acts against her own parliamentary colleagues. So that's why the question was really simply put, how much support do you think Israel is losing? And I think it'd be respectful to everybody else who's been listening for 52 minutes for you to have a crack at answering that. It's obvious. I am answering it. It obviously is losing respect, but I think the amount of respect it's losing because the MPs have been not allowed in. Now that's about Kemi Badenoch. So talk to me about Israel. You don't have to mention Kemi Badenoch again. Right. So the second issue is the barrier or the Hiroshima-like barrier that has been created around Gaza, inside Gaza, and that will have, I guess, a military perspective. There will be some military people in Israel who have said the way to stop Hamas and other terrorists from approaching Israel and doing what they did on October 7th is to have a larger border. And that we can argue about it, but there's a military process. Some high-up military generals have clearly decided that is the case, and I find it unsurprising.
But someone else could easily argue that it's ethnic cleansing, and the facts support that as well.
You can argue. I don't use the words. I don't know what the ethnic cleansing is. I can see.
Well, what it means is if you belong to a certain ethnicity, your house is going to get razed to the ground. And if you belong to a different ethnicity in exactly the same part of the world, but say a mile in the opposite direction, your house is not going to get razed to the ground by the Israeli government.
I think what people are trying to do is protect each other. So Israel wants to protect Israelis. If that involves having a larger border around the Gaza Strip, you're right. It could be on the Israeli side. You could have argued it would be on the Israeli side, but it makes sense to put further separation.
Why would you not do it on your own territory?
No. I'm saying it could have been done on its own territory.
Yeah, but why wouldn't you do that?
No, James, I'm only saying it's a military perspective.
No, and I'm only saying why wouldn't you do it? Because it's a good point that you raise. No. Why wouldn't you do it on your own territory? James, maybe they should have done. Okay? Yeah, but you're speculating about the military rationale for doing it in the first place, so you can at least speculate about the reason why they do it on Palestinian soil, not Israeli soil.
Well, if it was me, I would have done it on Israeli soil.
You're not an Israeli military leader who you think must have a clear rationale for doing this. You've already put yourself in their shoes, so stay in their shoes. Stay in their shoes. No, stay if you can. Stay in their shoes and tell me why they've done it this way round.
They've done it this way round because there is a supposed border with Gaza, which was meant to be protected and people were not meant to cross, and that was sorted. And so when people then come across that border, the Israelis will say, well, why should we give up some of our land for you to...
It would still be Israeli land.
For us to be protected.
It would still be Israeli land.
No, but they would be giving up half a mile all the way around the border.
It would still be theirs. It would still be theirs. They'd be in charge of the buffer zone as opposed to taking it from...
They'd be in charge of the buffer zone, but they'd be creating their own buffer zone of half a mile.
Yeah.
You're right, James. I don't argue, but can we move to the thing about the
I'm following your agenda here, Gary. If you don't like how it's gone, we're welcome to move on. And now the murdered paramedics. I wanted to move to the most important thing. Well, remember, this is the most important thing today. You're supposed to be answering a question that goes right back to October the 7th, 2023.
Okay, but
and it's now 10:58. But you tell me what it is you rang in to say.
The people who killed the Palestinian medics, if they have lied, should be court-martialed. It's a straightforward thing. It's a mistake. If it's a mistake, and then they try to cover up the mistake, straightforward court-martial. Disgusting behaviour.
And how many of those have there been? How many of those? How confident would you be?
You're talking about these three. Let's concentrate on these individual things.
I have.
Let's concentrate. Right.
And now we're talking about court-martials in response to one of these individual things, and I'm asking for the precedent. How successful or how optimistic would you be if you were the mother of one of these murdered paramedics that a court-martial would happen and that proper sanctions would be in place?
If there's a Supreme Court justice system in Israel, right, an independent judiciary who have come out against Netanyahu on numerous occasions. Israel is a divided country.
That's not what I asked. I asked for examples of these court-martials of which you speak.
Sorry?
I asked for examples of these court-martials of which you speak.
I don't know them, but I know that people
How can you have confidence in the process, then?
Because I know that people have been court-martialed.
Can I have an example? I mean, not just an example.
No,
that's a bit hard. Well, okay. Well, I don't have faith in things that I can't prove exist.
Why are you trying to... Why are you trying to take...
Go on. No, go on that last bit where you said, this is what? What were you going to say then?
What?
You just said, this is what? Right. What were you going to say then?
You are exacerbating beyond the individual circumstances.
Yes, I'm going back to October the 7th of 2023. I made that clear from 10 o'clock this morning.
Say again?
I'm going back to October the 7th of 2023. I made that clear at 10 o'clock this morning.
Well, you were trying to isolate these three particular things.
Only in the context of the latest developments. Gary, we've isolated the three particular things. You've said that the court-martial response in the event of these lies being proved would be satisfactory. And I wonder how you can say that if you can't persuade yourself, let alone me, that you have faith in that system.
But the most damaging part of this exchange may actually come later, when the discussion turns to the Palestinian paramedics who were killed. The caller makes a very serious claim. If Israeli forces made a mistake and then deliberately tried to conceal what happened, there should be consequences. That's a straightforward principle. If soldiers make a genuine mistake, there should be an investigation. If wrongdoing is established, there should be accountability. And if someone deliberately lies to cover up misconduct, that potentially makes the situation even more serious. But then James O'Brien presses the caller on something important. What evidence is there that the accountability process being described will actually work? The caller talks about court-martial proceedings, an independent judiciary, and previous cases involving Israeli officials. But when asked for concrete examples, he can't immediately provide one. And that matters, because saying that an accountability system exists is one thing. Demonstrating that the system actually delivers meaningful consequences is another. This is where political credibility comes into the picture. When governments and military institutions are accused of serious misconduct, the public doesn't just want to hear that investigations are possible. People want to know whether investigations are independent, whether evidence is properly examined, whether responsibility reaches senior levels when appropriate, and whether the final consequences are proportionate. That's why O'Brien keeps pushing the question beyond the individual incident. The caller wants to focus on these specific cases. O'Brien wants to connect them to the much larger question that has dominated the debate since October 7th. How much confidence should the public have in the institutions responsible for investigating and explaining what happens during this war? And that is a much harder question to answer, because credibility isn't something a government can simply declare. It is built through transparency, evidence, and accountability. And when people cannot explain what consequences have actually followed from alleged wrongdoing, skepticism is almost inevitable. That doesn't automatically prove every accusation being made is true. It doesn't mean every Israeli military action should be interpreted in the worst possible way. But it does mean that serious allegations demand serious scrutiny. And that is ultimately what makes this exchange so compelling. The argument isn't simply about Israel versus its critics. It's about whether claims of security, mistakes, investigations, and accountability can withstand sustained questioning. So what do you make of this exchange? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed the breakdown, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more political commentary.